All right. I
All
think
right.
we're recording. It says we're recording, so here we go. Hi,
Okay.
everybody. I am DelusionDispeller, and I have with me a special guest tonight. His name is Mark Lee, who actually just this evening has visited with the 12 tribes, and he'd like to share his perspective on what he experienced there. And I don't know exactly where he's coming from because we actually just met yesterday. And I just want to hear the other side of it. And because, as you know, I have heard all of the bad stuff about it, and I've brought that to everybody's attention. But Mark might have a whole different outlook on things from another angle. Um, Obviously, me having 2 psychology degrees, and especially one in child development, I'm mostly concerned about what's going on with the children there. Are they being brainwashed? Are they being beaten as is alleged? And honestly, as I started thinking about it, I imagine, as with any group, there can be misuses of discipline. There can be things that have gone awry. So obviously, in different groups and different facets of the group, there's going to be those people that take things to an extreme, and there's going to be other people that claim things that are happening that aren't. That's why I think it's important for us to get an insider's look, I guess, if you will. So, Mark, why don't you share kind of what your position is and what you did there tonight with the 12 tribes?
Sure. Originally I researched the community um, because I was looking for a religious experience. I visited many churches and I wanted to go much more deeper.
Sure.
When I grew up in the Midwest and I was involved in a lot of ministries. And since I'd moved to the West Coast and now in San Diego, I didn't have the same opportunity.
Hmm.
And so in my research online, I came across the community. They have public restaurants called the Yellow Deli.
Right.
And so it was just a great opportunity to kind of visit something extreme,
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
and, I read a lot of stuff online. And so I was kind of going, I did not take my family the first time around because, I was expecting who knows what. I mean, if I
Right.
did it online, I thought we might be kidnapped. I mean,
Yeah,
drugs. I mean,
of
drink the
course.
juice.
Sure.
But the first time I went out to the community that's in not Vista, but there's another. It's like in the country. It's a ranch, and it's like a 66-acre organic farm.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And
Common Sense Farm?
well, this one's not Common Sense Farm. I guess that one's on the East Coast, but
Okay.
this particular community, but it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. I
Hmm.
mean, the people there were extremely loving. It was clean living. It was healthy food. I mean, it was essentially a Garden of Eden in
Hmm.
some way.
Okay.
And so it was just captivating. I mean, it's like nothing I've ever seen before.
Hmm.
Um, and so, we visited for a while. We'd stay on the weekends. And it got to the point where they actually asked us to move in, to give up all of our possessions and to move in and join
Right.
the community. And we've been in that kind of process for a little over a year now. I'm getting some debts taken care of, personal issues, but we're sort of winding this all together to ultimately join.
Hmm.
Um,
Definitely a different perspective on that one.
Yeah, and actually before we get into some of the criticisms online,
Hmm.
I do want to say that almost every single thing I've ever heard, when
Hmm.
I experience it myself, totally different scenario.
Wow.
And I put a lot of emphasis on not meeting physically, but communicating on the phone with a lot of the anti-Facebook groups, a lot of the forums online.
Right.
I've watched a lot of videos, and I haven't been successful at actually having like a decent conversation the way we're having now.
Okay. That makes sense. Because there are a lot of biases out there. And of course, they're from people that haven't up close and personally experienced the group. I haven't. I've only read things and learned about it from internet and also from some former members that have been abused by the group, which is why I tend to seem a little bit biased because those are the only people I've ever talked to. But it's refreshing for me to hear the other side of things too, because I'm learning now that there are, you know, usually different ways of looking at things. There's not usually just one way, and everybody has different perceptions of things. I guess, like I said, my biggest concern is, how are the children doing? Are they being brainwashed? Are they being abused? Is that all true? And you know, they've actually shown footage. I've seen the footage of the beatings going on where the little boy is told, say you're tired, say you're tired. And he finally said he was tired while she's beating him with this willow switch or whatever she was using. And that kind of stuff bothers me, obviously, because I love children. So what kind of things did you see children escorted out for their daily whippings or whatever they allegedly say that the 12 tribes does?
You know, that was one of the biggest criticisms online, as far as
Yeah.
like the spanking. Now, when I first went to the community, you know, I spanked my children with my bare hand. Um, you know, I've always felt that that type of discipline was appropriate. But the one thing that they encouraged me with is they said not to use your hand because it connects you with the
Hmm.
you know, and you could become, and like I know it's like sometimes when I'm spanking my children, which I know in some countries is illegal. I know if you do it in public, it could, you know, it could work against you. So it's a kind of a strange thing about how sometimes society and governments can get involved in your parenting to the point of taking your children away for something as elementary as spanking. But unless it's abuse, I don't think it's a problem. And so we've put a great emphasis on just not, you know, essentially hitting, but just spanking. But anyway, one of the things the community said is they said to use a what they call a balloon stick, and I've seen them there, and it's this light plastic reed that when I've seen them spank their children, it's actually a lot more lenient and less painful than when I used to spank with my hand. So I actually was doing it worse than the community, and they actually taught me a way that seemed to be more on the point of discipline and less on, you know, this painful thing. Now, I've heard some people are, you know, describe it as like, you know, beating them with a rod,
Hmm.
but it's literally like literally a balloon stick you would see holding a balloon, and they do it
Right.
openly. They take their kids away and discipline them. And what shocked me though was interacting with these young people, how balanced emotionally they were and intelligent and kind. Whereas in normal society, when I talk to teenagers and young people, if they're not on their cell phones, they can't hold a conversation. They're not respectful saying yes or no, sir. So it just seemed to me that these children were much more advanced,
Hmm.
much more happier, kind. Um, you know, and I never saw any abuse, and I saw children being, you know, punished, disciplined. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually used to spank my children worse than the community in a way that if that I guess based on some of the criticisms, my kids should have been taken away. But
Yeah.
and I, you know, and I've talked to other parents and other people in the community and say, hey, am I breaking the law here? Because it kind of made me paranoid, you know,
Right.
because I thought if they're taking the kids away from this community, you know, what's the rule? And I mean, you know, now we just we do different methods, but it's been an
Sure.
interesting journey to learn about how to discipline children.
Definitely. Wow. And yeah, and you know, it's interesting that you brought that up because that had kind of crossed my mind. You know, people love sensationalism. The media loves sensationalism. The more sensationalized, the better, and the more ratings they get. So I often have wondered how much of this was done and posted online or in the news or whatever for those ratings. I don't believe that every community is necessarily overdoing the discipline. I think in, was it Germany or France, wherever it was, I would definitely call that abuse, what was happening to those children. um, if you're bringing a child into a situation where every morning you wake up, okay, go down and get your daily beating just for the heck of it, which is the way they kind of painted the picture, that would concern me, definitely. But I know what you're saying about the hand being connected to the person. And I had people in my life, actually guardians, caregivers, whatever you will, that told me the same thing. Don't use your hand, use a wooden spoon or something like that, so the child doesn't connect your caring hand with an angry hand, basically.
Right.
So I agree with you on that. I'm just really concerned. I know that it has been said that the 12 tribes beliefs are kind of Messianic Jewish, kind of Christian, a little mishmash of everything, but really who's behind it is Eugene Spriggs, or Eldon Spriggs, or Yonek as he's called. And Yonek seemed to, from what I've learned of some of his teachings and his child disciplinary rules, went a little bit overboard the wrong direction. Doesn't mean the whole group does, or that every group does. And that's why I'm glad to have you here to give me more of the other side of things, of maybe a group that doesn't take it to the extreme. They discipline, but in love, and with the idea of shaping the child, not abusing the child or turning them into little robots, if you will.
Well, as far as like the leadership in the community and how much they lord over and rule, like you might imagine a cult leader, it seems like with, I think there's like 2,000 members worldwide. There's
Sure.
a ton of different locations.
Mm-hmm.
These communities, I guess, have a body of elders. They have certain people that have just more experience, been there longer, but there doesn't seem to really be this like one guy who, like, you see in the movies where he's got multiple wives and all the money.
Right.
And I mean, in a lot of ways, these people, even who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, are living much better lives. I mean, they're eating the healthiest. They eat, like, they have a salmon hatchery in Alaska, and so they're eating, great food. They're eating organic vegetables. I mean, when I was there, they have persimmon trees. I'm eating, avocado trees.
Wow.
They have lakes. They have. I mean, it's almost like if there is a leader and he's controlling the masses, great. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I submit, because I live in my 2-bedroom apartment. I do my daily routine. When I go there, I feel like I'm on vacation.
Sure.
Now, granted, there are other criticisms about people having to work long hours, which,
Yeah.
I mean, look, what I'm trying to ultimately say is almost everything you read online or a testimonial, number one, you'll notice how old some of these things are, like how the YouTube videos are like 20, 30 years old.
Right.
Also, they're always the absolute most extreme. And then when I go to the community, and I've lived amongst these people, I've stayed the night there so many times, it's the complete opposite. Now, people will say, oh, they're just acting that way, to get you to warm up. But if they did that and I moved in, I could essentially leave. There's no gate, there's no wall.
Okay.
And a lot of these people still have family members out in the world. And so I'm not seeing any of that. In fact, I would say that, and I don't know how people line up politically, but the public school system today and what's going on in the world, it just seems to be getting more and more crazy. And I think that, like, being able to connect with people socially is getting more and more difficult. I just feel like these people are the most sound, the most normal, the most happy. So whatever they're doing, if it's brainwashing, I'm in. Brainwash me.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because recently my husband and I have left the typical Christian churches. And I've been charismatic, word of faith, diehard, name it, claim it, the whole 9 yards. And there's still a part of me that still holds to some of that. But the place we go to now, the assembly, is very Messianic Jewish, very, what's it called? Sacred name, Hebrew roots. Total different kind of outlook, more Old Testament than New Testament, I guess, in some ways. And yet, it honestly is the one place that we both feel really connected. Like, this is it. When we came, we kind of looked at each other, because it's like out literally in the middle of nowhere. We looked at each other and both said, cult, like we mouthed to each other. And we finally said the same exact thing that you just said. If this is a cult, give me everything, because seriously, we've seen the other side of the coin. We've seen the so-called Christian churches and been abused in them way worse than anything you can imagine. And this place, if we have a need, we just tell them, look, we need shoes, we need work clothes. And the next week we go to service and they're handing it to us. Here, you needed clothes, what size do you wear? I mean, that's really the heart of Yeshua to begin with. That's
Right.
what we're supposed to be doing. So I totally get what you're saying. Like I said, my only concern is for the children. And also, right now, you're seeing all of the good stuff. And, I've been told by former members, well, they're taught to do that. They put on this act, and then once you've sold everything, that's when you find out all this stuff behind the scenes. How concerned are you that maybe this is just a front, and maybe after you're there for a while, what's your plan B if that does happen, to get out of there and get your family out of there?
Well, the unique thing about my family, well, actually, let me say this. I was talking to another guy who went there because some people join with nothing and sometimes in debt. There was
Sure.
one guy that went there with student loans, and the community is actively paying off his student loans. So,
Wow.
and if the community, if the community, like, let's say I've got $100,000 and I give it to the community,
Hmm.
the reality is they're still clothing you, housing you, feeding you. I mean, it doesn't take long in Southern California to burn up 100 grand. I mean,
Sure.
rent here is $2,000 a month.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
at 25 grand a year, you could burn up 100 grand in 4 years in rent.
True.
So even if you did give them, a couple 100,000, you'd break even in a sense. But now what they've told me is, if you come here, you don't have to give all your stuff until you're baptized, until you basically commit. So they encourage you, live with them, spend time with them, literally where they can't hide and fake who they are,
Hmm.
because there's rarely a time they don't have visitors, by the way. And so if you get to the place where you say, okay, I want to live here forever, well, then what are you going to do with your bank account if you really are committing to living forever? And
Right.
so it's kind of like if I was getting married and, my wife had her own savings account and now we're married and she says, well, I don't want to share that with you. What kind of
Hmm.
marriage is that?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, no, and I mean, that's biblical, having all things common, and they shared amongst themselves and they all worked together. That is the Acts of the Apostles. That is definitely, I believe, what they're trying to establish there. Um, I actually went to a church where we started like that. We actually met in the pastor's home, and that was pretty much how it went, as much as possible. But as soon as we moved to a church building, division right down the middle. I didn't want to go there anymore. I was like, this feels stale to me. It doesn't feel like family anymore. And a lot of people felt that way. Eventually, the pastor, he's not even a pastor anymore. He's an artist. He was a teacher also in a big college, but he's not even pastoring anymore. As far as I know, I don't think he's even a minister. I mean, I might be wrong on that, but that just really shocked me. And how many people who led me to the Lord originally are not even in that type of church anymore. They're not hanging out with those people anymore. We all went our separate ways. And here I was, a word of faith person, going, I wish I could find a word of faith church that was like this, that had that feeling, that accountability, that love, that family feeling. And I never found it again till now, till I'm in this assembly of Yahweh, which is totally different than anything I used to practice. I mean, the head covering, the whole 9 yards, I adopted it all because I was like, this is family. This is the closest thing I can imagine to something that Yeshua would want us to be practicing and doing. So if you found that there, that's good. I pray that it stays that way. I've often thought about 12 tribes, and I thought, minus all the so-called child abuse and everything that's allegedly going on, it sounds pretty close to what Yeshua wanted us to do. It's very similar to what I attend right now, though I don't live there. It still sounds very familiar to me, to what I've been experiencing over the last, gosh, it's been almost 3 months, I think, since we started going, and we just kept going back. And it's quite a drive. It's a long drive to get to the area where it is versus my home. And there was a pastor that once told me, a church that's alive is worth the drive. And I think that's why we keep on going back, because it's family. It feels like family. We have a meal after our service. We're going to be celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles coming up, which is a 7-day thing. They actually rent out dorms and tents and RV spaces. So what church do you know that does that? Seriously. So I get what you're saying about living among them and feeling like family. And I pray it works out that way. I pray that you've found a tribe, a group of people that are sincere and really aren't doing things out of line. Because I do believe in child discipline myself. I did spank my children. It was not done brutally by any means. I don't agree with spanking infants. That is one thing I read about the 12 tribes. I have an issue with that. I also watched a couple documentaries of some former tribe members who, in their case, things were taken way to the extreme. His daughter almost died from being beaten because the wife took it way out of hand. And, there can be abuses within things. I don't think that necessarily means you throw everything out and say this is bad.
Right.
But I was reporting on things from the only side I knew, which was what I was hearing, which is why, once again, it's good to have somebody on that actually is going through it. Now, once you're there, you're probably not going to be able to come back and report back to us how it went unless you escape if you need to. That's my concern. So what do we do in that case? We can't have cameras there. They don't really welcome that sort of thing because they're
Well,
not trying to advertise all of that.
if I can respond to that,
Sure.
a couple things again on the, I want to, well, let me say on the camera thing, I actually took a lot of pictures when I was there with my cell phone.
Oh, okay.
Even some of the leaders smiled for the camera. So you could have video there, you could record. There is not a problem. As far as the children, I'm telling you, these children are the most amazing, healthy, happy. You got to see it for yourself. Like I said, I mean, I saw all the young kids there. I never saw bruises. I've even pulled young kids aside, 16, 17, and said, come on, man, like, what's it like? And and a lot of them came forward and said, there's things I miss about the world. There's things I wish I could do. And I'm like what? And they'd say, well, I really would like to go drive in a truck. I'd like to go fly in an airplane. And so in some ways, there's obvious sacrifices you make, but you know what? I was at my jacuzzi the other night and there's a group of young girls there and I saw one girl with cuts in her arms. I
Yeah.
saw girls talking about the boys that she was
Mhm.
dating or possibly sleeping with. And if you look at the drugs and the violence in the school system, I mean, who's really getting abused and beaten?
Right.
And when I talk to a lot, and I do want to eventually address some of the anti-12 tribes people that I've actually talked to, and they will say to me, well, this community will abuse your children. And I go, well, then where can I go where my kids are safe? And they go, I don't know. And then a lot of these individuals, see, I work in marketing and advertising, so I know the internet really well.
Uh-huh.
And so a lot of these individuals would be looking at things and not knowing that Google Plus, for example, records what they've looked at, what videos they've liked.
Oh, sure.
And so a lot of these ex-members are looking up stuff that's not safe for children or has adult content.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying to one of the major guys, I wish I could remember his name, but I maybe don't want to put him out there like that. I remember saying, how are you criticizing the welfare of the children, yet my children aren't even safe with you?
Right.
And so, I think the other thing I want to say is, you're always going to have hypocrisy.
Sure.
One thing I used to say is if there's like, say, a Walmart employee who slaps a customer, does that mean that Walmart's violent, or does that mean this isolated individual is violent? And then honestly, the other thing I want to say is I've talked to the community in the past about, hiding criminals, and they said they have great working relationship with the local police and they turn people in. Like, they will not hide somebody. They will not, if there's abuse, like if there's anything sexual, anything that's happened, they're proactive about saying, you got to go, because all the other members don't want to lose their children.
Right.
Because, in other countries like Germany or something where now in Germany, it's illegal to homeschool. You can't spank your children,
Mm-hmm.
something similar. So these people are very serious about keeping their families together.
Sure. That makes sense.
But I know I've said a lot. I've hit a lot of topics, but I just want to say I haven't ever found a place better. The love there, the unity, everything. And, this is coming from a guy who lives in San Diego, who I have enough income where I can spend my time however I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, what is there really? If you don't have intimate friendships and people who love you and a community raised up in the Lord who wants to teach you a better way,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's worth sacrificing what?
Yeah.
A boat, a car, going to the mall? Like, I don't even
Yeah.
want to go to the mall.
Right. And I totally get what you're saying, because you get to that point in life where you feel like you've seen it all, you've done it all, and what is left? And if you finally found a place where you're welcomed, you're embraced, and you have common beliefs, like-minded people that are kind to you. It struck me tonight when you said, I want to have a kind, gentle conversation. I was like, yeah, he's one of them. It was the first thing I thought. And I talked to my husband, and he's like, yep, I bet he's a recruiter. We bet he's a spy. That's the first thing we thought. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to go into it open-minded. And that's something Yeshua's been working with me about, is I am a very closed-minded individual, and I'm very bold about my closed-mindedness. And since going to the Assembly of Yahweh, he's really been changing me and really been showing me, listen to what people are saying. You don't always have all the answers. The Word of Faith movement that I was part of really taught you almost like your God. You can just speak this over yourself, and you are whatever you say you are. And it kind of got me to a point of almost vanity and pride. And I think the Assemblies of Yeshua has really kind of broken a lot of that off of me, to where I can really start listening to people and realize that I don't have all the answers, and it's okay to get answers from somebody else and be open-minded about it. So it sounds like you've kind of found that type of community. Now, what makes you, do you ever consider that maybe you just found a good community? Like, maybe they're not all this good. Maybe you just hit the jackpot and you found the one, which would be great if you did, but
Well, I guess it's possible. Oh, by the way, I'm not a spy because I don't have a beard and I don't have long hair. I actually,
I
uh,
know.
they believe men should have beards,
Right.
which is hard for me because I actually really enjoy a close shave.
Oh
You know,
boy.
but these are the kind of things that in the law, in this looking at life, is a beard so bad? Maybe I would be used to it after I've had one for a while.
Yeah.
But no, to address your question, there seems to be a unity amongst the different communities, and
Hmm.
and communities sort of ebb and flow. They have sort of new members, older members obviously pass on, or move to a
Right.
different community if they have more medical needs. So like one of the things I was talking to when I was talking to an ex-member is they were talking about some of the working hours, and I said, at my job, there's people I don't like. There's
Yeah.
things that I have to do that I don't want to do. It's
True.
not much different. So, I think the community comes with its own set of challenges and sacrifices. But one thing I've learned about a lot of things in life is everyone has their own experience. You can
Hmm.
ask any student at a college or an inmate in incarceration, how is your time? And depending on who you ask, you'll get a completely different answer.
That's so true.
But I can tell you, as far as this community goes, it is by far the best, healthiest, happiest, amazing place I've ever experienced. And I've been to seminary, and I've been in the military, and I've traveled the country, and I've been to tons of different denominations. And I know what you're talking about when you talk about using the name Yahweh or Yeshua, and all of the doctrinal differences. But for me, what settled my heart on this community is the intimacy amongst friends, and the passion for the Lord, and the passion for healthy living, and just walking away from a world that seems to never stop arguing and fighting.
Hmm.
And the reality is my kids, if I put them in the public school system, they're going to drown.
Yeah.
If I send them out to the world, where's the world going to, unless I move to the Bible Belt or in some small town in the country, they're destined for failure. I mean,
Hmm.
I look at, one of the things that really impressed me about the community is when you see a wedding there, two young people who are virgins getting married. I mean, what young person today can say they're a virgin with their marriage?
Right.
And I know that's a terrible thing to think about and to talk about, but this is practical when you have children.
Hmm.
And
True.
so Again, all of the claims about the community, I'm not saying they're not true. I'm sure there's something, but you know what? Like I said, when I see the stuff online and I see like VHS videos from the 80s, what's going on today? Why don't we ever hear anything? And like I told you, if people want to leave the community, all they literally have to do is walk off the compound, hail a ride, and leave.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple. I come and go off the community whenever I feel like.
Wow.
In fact, I'm going to go this Friday. I'm going to stay for the weekend, and I'm going to have a fantastic time, better than I'll have anywhere else.
So you think that once you're infiltrated into the community and you're one of them, literally, you're going to have as easy a time to just get up and leave?
I mean, obviously you give up the keys to your car, so you're not going to just be able to take your BMW and drive off the lot.
Right.
But I think the reason that I'm able to give it all up is because I don't really have anything. Now, most people don't either. Most people are in some form of debt, or they get in a routine where at night they watch TV, they watch dinner, they go to bed, they get up and go to work. I mean, I've actually talked to the community about asking why the homeless don't move on the community. I mean, there's a significant homeless population in San Diego who's living off the street. And I said, why would they rather do that?
Yeah.
And the community said it's because we put them to work. They don't want to work. And so, I see kind of life as something not really too much to give up. And I mean, I've got my apartment. I've got my daily routine. What am I really doing? I mean, let's say I lived it, and all of this is predicated on whether God exists. If God doesn't exist, then fine, milk this life for all it's worth, see all the entertainment, drink all the beer, kiss as many women as you can. Not that I have an interest in that anyway,
Right.
but if God is real, then why not center your life around, even if it's not the perfect church. And my friend used to say, even if it was the perfect church, you better not go to it because you'll mess it up.
I've heard that too.
even if it's not the perfect community, it's an opportunity to do something different and to give your life over to God and the thought and the worship of God. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it did. I do have another question, because another thing that concerned me again about the children is they're not allowed to play. I was told that they take their toys away. They're not allowed to do imaginative play. To me, that seems pretty healthy for a child. But I get like the whole vain imaginations thing, and they don't want them to be, straying off into their own line of thinking or whatever. They want them always focused on Yeshua and that type of belief system. Have you seen anything of that? Do you see them with toys? Do you see them developing normally? Child development expert here with a bachelor degree. So yeah, I'm kind of concerned about that.
Well, just as a personal testimony, and to try not to be biased, when I buy my children, I have a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and one on the way. Oftentimes when I buy them a toy, they play with the box,
That's true.
Or if I give them a toy, then they want another one. And I'm telling you, like, my children will go to the store, they'll say, oh, Daddy, I really want this truck. So I'll buy them a truck. They play with it for about 10 minutes. And the next time I go to the store, they want another one. And so I've come to learn with my children, there's an endless amount of toys that will satisfy. And I think about, what are the, and because I've thought of that, because when you go there, there's no toys. There's no Fisher Price, Barbie Corvette or, a basketball hoop.
Right.
But what I did see the children doing is, at this particular community, there's an outdoor pond. So they're canoeing. They're learning how to build a fire. They're learning how to play instruments. They're learning how to build different things, especially with the tabernacle or the holiday you're celebrating. They build the outdoor shelters, for that time of year, the season.
Okay.
So, and the other thing is the vain imaginations. When I go to Barnes and Noble, I can't believe how large the fiction section is. Or I'm sorry, the nonfiction. Fiction's wait a minute. Fiction's
you were
the
right the
non-truth.
first time.
Yeah, seriously. I get them confused.
That's
the
okay.
Fiction, because non is the truth and the fiction is the non-truth. So, so the fiction, and when I think about my children as Christians, Do I want my kids reading about what's the popular story with the wizard and the wand and
Oh yeah. Harry Potter.
Harry? Look, I do not want my kids learning about Harry Potter. And now, two real quick stories. I remember at church, and they were asking a girl. They said, "Easter's coming up. What is Easter all about?" And the
Hmm.
young girl said, "Easter is the day that the bunny rose from the grave."
Oh
And I
wow.
and I thought, talk about blending of cultures and ideas. And you look at Halloween and like, what are we doing? You look at
Hmm.
parts of Christmas and it's like, are we reinforcing our children with biblical truth, or are we just blending with a pagan culture?
Right.
And so, now, are there obvious benefits for kids to be able to have toys? Sure. Is it a sacrifice? Yes. But again, for me, what it comes down to is when I can look a 10-year-old in the face and I can engage in a serious conversation and they can be respectful and have discipline to listen to me,
Hmm.
I'm blown away. Because when I go into society, first off, most girls are taught to just avoid, like when I talk to young people in the world, if they're girls, they just naturally stay away. They think I'm, trying to flirt with them or something weird. Or
Right.
young guys just want to talk about, fighting or football or something impersonal and not
Hmm.
in the realm of development, growth, and relationship. But when I go to the community and all these young people are, just being a part of the conversation, I guess what I'm saying is whatever they're doing, it seems to be doing a better job.
Yeah. No, I get that. Um, I'm trying to think in the lines of the whole toy thing and play thing. Um, I actually saw a documentary where they said the children were spanked because they were found playing, like using a box as a truck and, brooming it across the floor like boys do. They were spanked for that. Does that not concern you, or is that something you haven't seen, or?
I got to tell you, when you describe that, that seems very weird. Like somebody who's pretty much evil, somebody who's cruel, unloving, scary to be around.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, try to imagine, 80 to 100 people living together with that same mentality, because it
Right.
would almost have to have that unity. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you had a family who was convicted that that was wrong, how could they live amongst each other?
Yeah.
So it's almost sensationalism, because like when I go there and my kids are acting up, I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't want my kids running around and doing things. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, come on, guys, be quiet, like calm down. And the community's like, oh, well, we'll help you out. We'll entertain your young one while you're having a conversation. And so they seem to be much more patient with children, much more willing to work with them. So from my experience and what I've seen, it's the exact opposite, where when I go to a grocery store and I see a woman's daughter or a woman with her children, they're screaming in the grocery store, or they're yelling at their kids, or they're publicly shaming by them by spanking them in public. It's it just is it's makes me cringe. But when I look at the community and how they separate themselves when the child is acting up, they talk to the child. If the child needs spanked, they will, and then they restore them back. But I'm telling you, I've never seen a happier uh, group of young people. Um, and I remember seeing a young boy with a tool that was carving wood, and he was making like a spoon out of a piece of wood.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that sense, it's like a more productive toy rather than a pair of handcuffs or a machine gun, or
Right.
or a superhero that beats up another superhero,
Sure.
that kind of thing.
I see what you're saying. There's a level of peace that comes with their type of play because it's more of a natural inclination. And I guess, back in Bible days, they didn't have Barbie dream houses and ninja warriors and, all that kind of stuff and WWE. And yeah,
Right.
no, I get what you're saying about that. And like I said, when I saw the 12 tribes, what initially attracted me to even investigating about it was I was looking for more than what I had seen and experienced. I knew there was something closer to what the Bible said, closer to what Yeshua taught. And I recently found out that I'm Jewish. So it even more appealed to me to find Messianic Jewish communities. Like I said, what turned me off was all the documentaries I saw, and even talking to people recently who did experience the abuses. So I've got to be honest, I'm still concerned that you're only seeing right now what they want you to see. And hopefully at some point you can come back and say, nope, you're all wrong. It's still all good. And I haven't seen anything of what you're telling me or whatever. How do your children feel about adapting to this new way of life?
Well, they're significantly younger, so they're just kind of going to roll with it at 4. But let me comment on one thing. I mean, by the way, the community there is so loving. I mean, they'll pick up your children, love your children, feed your children. You're not going to get that in very many places. I mean, even in a church, most people don't touch each other's children. And I make it a point, I think, just not to. I kind of see a natural boundary where the men will play with the male children of other people and the women with the women. So there aren't just like men taking my daughter and like walking off with her. You know, there's none of that. Right. But I do want to say, though, that when I talk to a lot of the Facebook pages, like the ex-members, it was shocking to me how cruel these people were to turn on to me, to insult me, to shame me. Whereas when I go to the community and I talk to them and I say, you know, some of the concerns that you have, like how patient and willing they are. And, you know, I see a pattern of, well, first off, you know, they say don't knock it till you've tried it. So I think the first thing you should do, like anybody, is to go there and be honest with them. You know, say, look, I'm skeptical. I've got questions, and they'll let you. And you're right. There's risks I'm going to take by going there, but what's worse? You know, a spank when they're bad with a stick, or unleashing them into the public system where who knows what they're getting involved in. And those teachers of the public school system, they're not Christians. Right. Even if you go to a private school, that doesn't mean they're Christians. You know, they just were qualified and put Christian on their application. So, I mean, to me, if the concern of these people, the critics, the ex-members, are for the safety of the children, you know, for many of them, they're not. I mean, if you look at a lot of the Facebook pages, I don't see a place of warmth and care and love and, you know, positive information and things like that. It just seems to be a lot of anger and bitterness. And I even read, and I think it might have been through some of the information you heard about, like they're putting hidden mics and cameras and recording devices.
Bugging rooms.
All of that is total dishonesty, because even if they were going to record me, first off, in California, it's illegal to record without someone's permission. And that's a California law on the phone and everywhere. Right. So they would be breaking the law. So that would be the first thing. Secondly, like, you know, they would have to have pretty like extensive quality, like I'm talking government FBI equipment, to be putting little mics like James Bond style stuff to be recording you. When what are they really recording? Because they already know the people that go there are full of critiques and doubts. And, you know, and like I told you, I've walked around my cell phone recording. So I'm just saying, like, all the fears I've ever heard, all the things I've ever heard, I've never seen substantiated. And the key for me is when I go to the ex-members and I talk to them, they themselves have never treated me nice. They have turned on me, gossiped about me, you know, accused me of being a spy and a liar, when all I really am is a guy like anybody else who loves God and wants to be a part of a people that actually will love me back. Not just Sunday morning for an hour and then I see you next week.
Yeah, no, I get that. I personally don't have any desire to go to the community because I'm happy in the community I'm in. I love the assembly. And as far as I'm concerned, they're my utopia on earth. Now, what you said about, well, you know, what's worse, them being in the world and dealing with all this stuff, or getting hit with a stick? Okay, if it's normal discipline and it's hit with a stick, like when they're old enough to reason, then I get that, if it's like a couple swats, but not what I'm hearing, and not infants of 6 months old or a year old. I don't agree with that. I agree with discipline, and not only that, Are you ready to have your children be disciplined by the other members of the group? Because that's another thing they believe in. How do you feel about that?
Well, and I also want to couple that with the fact that the other members will be loving my children and caring for my children and teaching my children. So, the thing is that the spanking thing seems to be the overarching issue with the community. Other things of like the youth working, but you would think there'd be more for a quote unquote cult. But I just don't see what you're talking about. I've never
Mhm.
seen a young person spanked. And I've actually witnessed them spanking their children, and they literally pull out this tiniest reed where even at the hardest smack, you couldn't really hurt these kids. And I've talked to some of the 16, 17-year-olds going, what's it like to be spanked? It's incredible how they say at that age, you can call it brainwashing, how they say, I really needed it. I'm really glad. And let me just say this, when I grew up as a child, my father was way too casual. I kind of wish my father would have spanked me,
Mhm.
as well as, engaged in conversation, taught me, loved me in a way that was balanced, not just bought me junk and junk food. But do I feel okay with other people spanking my children? I'm not a fan of that. But do I think if they're doing it in love, like if I had my children over at your house and you said to me, hey, Mark, if your children are acting up, do you mind if I give them a swat in the butt? I might say, yeah, because if my kids go to your house and they get spoiled, then I have to undo all of that. Like when kids go to grandma's, grandma feeds them all the
Mhm.
cookies and fun, and then you got to take your children back home and undo all that. I like it that there would be a community who would reinforce what I'm teaching. Now, do I want them to spank my kids with a stick? Well, as long as there's no bruising, I don't care. As long as it's not 50 lashes, I
Mhm.
don't care. And I'm gonna guarantee you, I'm sane and sober. I love my kids more than myself. If my kids are getting abused, not only will I leave, but I will rain fire down on lawsuits on that community, and I will publicly shame them. And I'm not the only one. There are other
Okay.
people who feel the same way. So just keep that in mind. The natural love that a parent has for their child, it'd be really hard to encourage that person to let their children be beat by other people.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to hear you say that actually, because just in case you might be wrong and it
Right.
does turn that way, you know, I'm being very open-minded about the whole thing. Like I said, I kind of knew what was going to come about tonight, and I was like, okay, this will be interesting because I haven't yet heard the other side of things. I haven't heard all the good. Um, I've seen the videos, and like I said, it kind of attracted me to the group at first till I heard all the other stuff. So, in balance, if there is balance there, I could see where somebody would be drawn into something like this because there's a lot of positivity versus the negativity in the world, obviously. And it's different, I'm sure, for people that are born into the group versus the people that come into the group, as with anything. Um,
Can I
it's
say one
just
thing?
interesting. Yeah, go right ahead.
Because we're covering a lot. I didn't want to forget this.
Sure.
You know what? I might have lost it. Let me think for a minute. I think as far as I remember what I wanted to say. You, it, when you have an open door policy, which is really what they have. I mean,
Hmm.
anybody can come.
Right.
You're always going to have statistically one violent person. They have 2,000 plus members. Is not one of them a murderer? Maybe. Is not one of them a child molester? Maybe. I think what's important though, and I'm not justifying that, and trust me, if I saw any of those people in there, I might be the murderer. Okay, let me just put that out
Yeah.
there, because I'm not afraid to defend the innocent. But let me say, I think what we're missing is the fact that there's 100 people in this one community I visit alone with day in and day out success stories
Yeah.
of living in purity, living in holiness, living in healthiness. And I met with them tonight,
Hmm.
and we sat down to dinner, and what I talked about was some of the financial things I need to take care of before I move in, and I need to take care of like work issues and my stuff. And they were just so different than the rest of the world. There was such a patience and gentleness and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you know what? I actually said, don't worry. Like, I actually plan on committing to join. And they said, you know what? Don't promise. Just
Mm-hmm.
if you want to, and you find out that you will, then so be it. But if you find that 2 months down the road, you're not happy here, you're free to go.
Hmm.
And so there's no pressure. They don't want your money. And to be honest, like I told you, most of the people who are coming are not millionaires.
Right.
And if a millionaire wants to give all his stuff to the community, again, this community is turning back. Like when I go to this 66-acre organic farm,
Mm-hmm.
they have a mountain on there where you can climb up the mountain. It's surrounded by avocados. They've got 4 ponds. They've got a volleyball court. They've got, I mean, I'm not saying that's why you should join.
Right.
They've got cows and chickens. They've got a huge dining area. And I mean, even if you were going to go without God as being your motive, it's still a better life than most people are living now.
Yeah.
I can't believe more people don't do it, especially those without children. Why isn't everybody there?
What about Yonek's actual teachings? Because I have read some of those. Are you familiar with his teachings? Not just about the child disciplining. There's some other teachings that are really controversial that he's shared. What do you think?
Well, what's interesting is when I was meeting with the people, I remember there was somebody who was lighting incense, and I asked one of the guys, I said, "Why do you guys do that?" And he said, "I think it has something to do with casting out evil spirits." And then some other guy said, "No, man, like that's not what we believe." He goes, "Where'd you pick that up?" And he goes, "Well, I kind of remember the Catholics swinging the ball back and forth."
Right.
And so what I've come to find out, like many churches today, they don't really know the full story. Like, how many Presbyterians know who John Calvin is, or how many Methodists know who their guy is,
Yeah.
or what their theological viewpoints are. John Wesley was the Methodist, but
Mm-hmm.
the thing is most of these believers don't know. And as far as the teachings go, yeah, like, do I think that Spriggs is the second coming of Elijah? No, I don't believe that. Will I ever believe that? No, I will never believe that.
Yeah.
Now, do they teach that and believe that? Sure they do. Is that a requirement to join? Probably not, because most people, and then when Spriggs is long and gone, and I'm sure he will be in the next couple decades or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it just moves on. So I think the fact that there's not some, like when I was in the military and basic training, you had to learn the handbook.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that half the members don't even know the handbook tells me, and by the way, I think I know more about the 12 tribes
Then they do.
than a lot of the 12 tribes members.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because for most of these people, some of them are very simple people that they
Right.
plant the onions, they go home, they
Uh-huh.
just like everyday people. And like I said, most church believers today do not know the inside teaching, and many of them don't agree. Like, you could talk about Christian doctrines about head coverings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, people don't know that in 1 Corinthians 11, it has a great chapter that's hard to argue against about head coverings.
Yep.
90% of Christian churches don't wear them, don't have a clue, think it was
Good
written for
point.
them.
Yeah.
So if you could think of a specific doctrine that was controversial, I'd love to hear it. But otherwise, I don't really think these people care.
Right. No, that makes sense. And they wouldn't care because they haven't been in the world, and they don't probably even think to go online and research something like that. I'm in the world, so I have access to computers and phones and people and whatever that they don't have. And they do live a simpler lifestyle, kind of like the Amish or Mennonites or, people like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I think even back in biblical days, it was probably a simpler life. Probably a scarier life in some aspects and some parts, but definitely simpler, more basic. People weren't as knowledgeable. Their brain probably didn't even expand to know the things that a lot of people in the world know. And sometimes that's a good thing, and other times not so much, as we're learning from, look at Iraq and the other places in the world, the terrible things that their expanding brains are coming up with to do to people. I mean, you probably feel pretty safe within that community as well. Even though, yeah, you have murderers or child molesters living among you, they don't seem like the type of people that would tolerate something like that from what I've seen. I've heard from ex-members that, oh yeah, this is rampant, and they, they don't stamp this out, and they don't have jails there, so these people just get away with it. I don't know. I haven't gone there. I can't say, but yeah.
Well, if they solve problems within the community, I think it might be because they don't trust the justice system.
Mhm.
I personally, I got a speeding ticket, and they were supposed to mail me the ticket, didn't, and so the price of it doubled. And so, I would much rather there are things. Now, if there is a serious crime like child molesting or murdering, trust me, there is no shuffling and hiding, and they don't bury the dead body back out in it
Right.
doesn't become avocado food. Okay. But like I said, if they did do anything that was like what you and I, healthy minded people, would consider wrong, then they're not going to want to let a guy like me join,
Right.
because I'm going to ruin their system.
Mhm.
They can't, if they're going to operate like that, they can't have an open door policy. They can't have visitors coming. And by the way, you could say that they could know all about you, and what you're exploring, and the fact that you're kind of having an anti-12 tribes theme. They would still let you come on. They're not going to
Oh
lock you
yeah.
out of the building. So the fact that they're so open to the community. Oh, and by the way, let me just say, I know a lot of the X12 tribes. Let's say that a lot of their claims are valid, and I'm not going to
Mhm.
take it away from them. I don't know if the 12 tribes have changed over the last 30, 40 years.
Mhm.
But the thing is, remember, these are people who left, who maybe dealt with isolated incidents, maybe an imperfect situation. And by the way, whenever you put people together, like I was in the military, you get 60 guys in a platoon, there's problems.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just life. So, is it perfect? But my thing is where can I go where I'm not going to experience worse in the world? I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't like to push too much politics, but when I hear stories of kids in today with transgendered issue, where kids are taking drugs to delay their puberty so they can decide if they're male or female, I'm sorry. I'd rather beat my kids with a rod and go eat some salmon and talk about God tonight. I mean,
Yeah.
like, and by the way, if kids were getting beat with a rod, they would probably be so scared to not redo whatever that is they're doing, and they wouldn't be walking around dancing and laughing and smiling, and that's all they're doing.
Well, and I saw one of the videos on there with a little baby boy talking, and he was all smiles and everything, and they were talking about, oh, say hi to Auntie, whatever. And I'm like, if everybody is doing this and beating kids, there's no way a kid would be that happy. You can't program or brainwash a child into being naturally happy. You can just tell the kid is just a naturally happy, bubbly kid. And nobody was being mean to him. I mean, they're corrective. I have seen that in some of the videos where you hear somebody scolding. There is one where they're singing this song, and the girl behind the kid kind of turns his head forward because they're supposed to look forward when they're singing or whatever. And yeah, some of the questions that raised in my mind was, is there a reason why she's so worried about him looking forward? Maybe they're going to get beat if they don't look forward. I think, like so many other things, there could be a possibility that some of the ex-members did experience the extremes of people that took the system way out of proportion and went a different direction with it. And like the fact that you said Eugene Spriggs is going to be gone like within a couple decades or maybe sooner, who's going to take over then? Will it maybe, I don't know, even out somehow, be a little bit less on the discipline side as far as extremes that have been taken? Maybe it can be a good thing. And honestly, at first I was like, I want to close down all the cults, make everything stop. And then I thought, well, maybe there's a point here that we should be doing some of these things. I'm not talking about the discipline things necessarily, but the dancing, the camaraderie, the community, the feasting together, which is why I love the place I go to, because there is that fellowship. We sit with different people every week at the table. We meet new people all the time. And in our assembly on Sabbath, you don't talk about anything worldly. you honor Yeshua and your conversation honors him. I've never been to a place like that where the pastor will get up and say, okay, today is Sabbath. This is Yeshua's day. This is Yahweh's day. We're not discussing all of the problems we have in the world and whatever. We're literally going to honor him. This is his day. I was so impressed with that. So I do understand where you're coming from with the difference in here's the world and here's this peaceful, loving, community type place. And like I said, more power to you if that's really what they are and what you found. And if it's not, I hope you'll come back and tell us too, either way. Or if it continues to be, I hope you'll come back and say, if you can, make more videos and say, hey, I've been here this long. This is what I've experienced. I haven't seen this or I have seen that. And let us know, because honestly, we need to know from an inside source.
Yeah, if you don't mind, before we close, I wanted to comment. From my experience, not only with the 12 tribes, but also with the ex-members, I've probably talked to 4 or 5, and I've asked them what these criticisms are, and nothing seems to really add up. And I told you there was 2 out of the 5 that I found pornography on their search history on YouTube, and I thought to myself, and these are the ones who talk about the safety of the children. These people aren't even trustworthy with my children. So if they're concerned about the health of the children, then they're being hypocrites. So, if we treated the world with the same criticism that we treat the 12 tribes, what would we allow?
Yeah.
We would have to take our kids out of the movie theaters, out of the malls, out of the public school system, out of the public parks. I mean, my children went to a public park the other day, and some homeless guy left a bottle of alcohol open on the play set. So now they can't go there. And if the 12 tribes got caught with an open alcohol bottle around the kids, what would they do? So it's easy to put a giant microscope and to exploit a few circumstances, and yet ignore the thousands of beautiful things that are happening there. And also on the vice versa, letting the world just go by and it's evil and thinking nothing of it.
Yeah.
And so I often wonder, if people are going to be critical of the 12 tribes, are they also that critical of their own workplace? Are they often that critical of their own families? Are they So that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think people from the outside looking in don't get it, but I assure you, as God is my witness, every single thing I've seen has been wow. I mean, it is the most amazing place, loving, healthy, happy, good teaching. Now, are there some doctrines that I don't know of? Okay. Are they ever going to come up? Probably not. And even if they did, in the whole scheme of things, when the rubber meets the road, I probably don't even care. And if that means I'm brainwashed, like I told you, I'd much rather be brainwashed by that than thinking that whatever's going on in society today is the truth.
Fair enough. Makes a lot of sense. And you brought up a lot of interesting points to the contrary of everything that I've been saying and hearing and reading and learning. So I appreciate your time and sharing these things. Like I said, I do hope you'll come back and let us know how things are going.
Absolutely.
You probably have a beard next time I see you and look a little bit different, but it might be something where you're more peaceful and happy in your life, and hopefully your children will be okay and safe and everybody will do well. And I'll be happy to update people as you talk to me about what's going on there. But I do appreciate your time, Mr. Mark Lee. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's great hearing from the other side of things. I have to remain unbiased and entertain everybody's ideas of what's going on, but it's good to hear the other side of what draws somebody to the 12 tribes. So I really appreciate your time tonight, and Yahweh be with you as you continue your search for peace and happiness.
Likewise. Take care. God bless.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, everybody, you've heard from Mr. Mark Lee, the other side of the story. 12 tribes, cult or community? You decide. Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.